within our reach. Students and families all across America can't afford any more delay. Suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Madam President.
Senator from Tennessee.
Madam President, I ask the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this week is the 13th annual National Charter Schools Week. And on Tuesday, Senator Landrieu and I of Louisiana joined with 10 other senators in introducing a resolution praising the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the students who are part of the charter school movement across our country. Let me begin by explaining exactly what a charter school is, because sometimes we stand up and start talking without talking about without explaining the subject. A charter school is the Memphis Academy for Science and Engineering. I visited there 3 or 4 years ago. It was during spring break. And during spring break, most of the students in Memphis were somewhere else, but not in the Memphis Academy for Science and Engineering. These were sophomores studying advanced placement biology. These were children who had been in other schools the year before that were deemed to be low-performing schools. In other words, these were among the students in Memphis least likely to succeed. But they'd been fortunate. They'd been allowed to go to this charter school. Their parents had chosen the school, and here's what was different about it. The union rules, the state rules, and the federal rules had been relaxed so that the teachers had the freedom to do in that school what they thought those children needed. In this case, many of these children didn't have as much at home as other children do. So the teachers decided the school ought to be open 12 hours a day, and it ought to be open on Saturday morning, and it ought to be open more weeks a year. And they were there, as I said, on spring break, studying advanced placement biology, which is not what many sophomores do in many schools anywhere in this country. And these children were succeeding. The school was able to pay some teachers more than others. It was able to have some classes that are larger than others. It meant that some scheduled classes were longer than others. And some children got special attention. You may say, well, that makes so much common sense. Why aren't they able to do that in every public school in America? And that's a very good question. Because in a way, every one of our 100,000 public schools in America should be a charter school, in the sense that the real definition of a charter school is one that gives teachers the freedom to use their own good sense and judgment to deal with the children who parents choose to send to that school. I have a little bit of a personal interest in charter schools. 20 years ago, I was the United States Secretary of Education. I was in my final year. The last thing I did in 1992 as United States Education Secretary was to write a letter to all the school superintendents in America, urging them to try what a small number of Minnesota public schools were doing, which they were then calling start-up schools. These were the first charter schools in America. And the origin was primarily from those who were part of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minnesota. But at the same time, on the conservative side of the ideological spectrum, there were many who were calling for getting rid of union rules and state rules and regulations that were making it harder for teachers to teach. So there was a happy convergence of support for this idea of startup schools. I remember Albert Shanker, the late head of the American Federation for Teachers, supported the idea from the beginning. But many of those in the teachers' unions opposed it. Many of those in the education establishment didn't like it. They were afraid of what might happen. Well, here's what has happened over the last 20 years. Instead of a handful of schools in Minnesota, we now have about 5,600 charter schools in America today, or about 5% of all of our public schools are charter schools. The way they work is very simple. They're public schools, and the money that the state and local government would ordinarily spend on the school follows each child to the charter school. So it's just a public school organized in a different way. The first one, as I said, was in 1992, City Academy High School in St. Paul, Minnesota. But in 1997, President Clinton called for creating 3,000 charter schools by 2002. This was after the first President Bush had called for creating break-the-mold schools in every school district in America, another name for what we call today charter schools. And then the second President Bush in 2002 called for $200 million in federal dollars to support charter schools. Today, there are 41 states have charter schools, and the schools serve 2 million students, about 4% of the 50 million students in our public schools today. I'm proud to say our own state of Tennessee has had a strong charter school movement, and only recently has the state charter law, which was passed in 2002, been amended to remove the cap on the number of schools in the state and on limitations on student eligibility. We currently have 40 charter schools operating in Tennessee, 25 in Memphis, 11 in Nashville, nearly 10,000 students in the state. Our First to the Top plan, Tennessee won the President's Race to the Top plan for education, included $14 million to expand high-performing charter schools. The Achievement School District, which Governor Haslam has created to turn around schools that are failing, has approved 3 charter operators to turn around priority schools, and we could expect more from that. So the question often is asked, well, are charter schools really helping students? And in some ways, the jury is still out. Charter schools are relatively new, and there are many factors that go into the success of a student in a school, the number one factor being what happens at home. But they're good, encouraging indications. A recent study by Stanford University found that 2/3 of the charter schools in Tennessee are improving student performance in reading or math at a faster rate than competing traditional district public schools. And 67% of charter schools in Tennessee have been improving the overall growth of their students for the last 3 years. But that means that 30% of the schools included students who weren't performing as well or were performing worse. So the fact of the matter is that not every charter school is going to be successful. Not every startup business is successful. But we have a model in our country that reminds us of what can happen when we have autonomous institutions where administrators and teachers have the privilege of using their own judgment and common sense to make things happen. And we call that higher education. In the United States of America, we have 6,000 higher education institutions. They're of all kinds: yeshiva, Nashville Auto Diesel College, Vanderbilt, the University of Tennessee, Notre Dame, Stanford. There are many different kinds: profit, nonprofit, public, non-public, but they're all autonomous, and the students choose the schools. And what has happened? Everyone in the world agrees that we have not only the best colleges in America, we have almost all of the very best colleges in America. So our goal should be, I think, gradually to increase the number of charter schools. At the same time, it's important that there be some accountability. I know that in Tennessee, they've got a tough review board, and if the charter school is not working, it's closed down. That should be the case in many other places. You might say, why would you go through that struggle? Well, we should be doing that with some of the non-charter public schools as well, and we're beginning to with the so-called turnaround schools. Charter schools should be held to the same standards that other public schools are. And charter schools shouldn't be allowed to pick and choose. They should be required to enroll all eligible students, and if more students want to come than they have room for, there could be some fair method for choosing the students, such as a lottery, and maybe that makes a very good case that if charter schools are so popular that more families want their children to go there, then we need even more charter schools. So, Madam President, I'm happy to come to the floor today to praise the teachers and the innovators, the presidents of both parties, including President Obama currently and Arne Duncan, his Secretary of Education, who have strongly supported charter schools, just as President Bush and President Clinton and the first President Bush did. This is a movement that has broad bipartisan support. It has grown from a handful of schools 20 years ago in Minnesota to 5% of all of our public schools in the country. What we have found is that when you give teachers more freedom to use good judgment, and when you give parents more choices of schools, that good things happen. The charter school movement is proving that. This is a week to salute their hard work and to hope that over the next year, 5 years, 10 years, that more and more public schools become charter schools where teachers are free to exercise their judgment and parents are free to choose the schools. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Well, thank you, Madam President. In less than 2 months, 53 days to be precise, the interest rate on subsidized student loans will double to 6.8% unless Congress acts. If rates on subsidized Stafford loans are allowed to rise, as many as 7.4 million students across the nation, including approximately 43,000 students in Rhode Island, will pay about $1,000 more each year. And that is on top of already significant debt. And some have argued, even while claiming to support keeping interest rates low, that the increase would not be a significant financial burden. Students and families beg to disagree. This would be a significant impediment to completing their education, for younger students starting their education, for those seeking educational opportunities, for job transition in midlife. Those opportunities would be frustrated also. Right now, students and their families are sitting around the kitchen table making a tough decision about next year. Can they afford to go to school if this interest rate is doubled? On one Rhode Island mother wrote me, in her words, "Please do not raise the interest rates on student loans. My son will be in his last year. I cannot afford to pay any more and fear that he will not be able to graduate and still have all the loans to pay back." So this would be, in addition to frustrating educational advancement, it would leave many, many students across the country with lots of debt and no degree. Hundreds of thousands of young people, parents, educators, members of the faith community, and other community leaders have come to us with one simple request: don't double the rate. Some on the other side have argued that low-cost federal loans have contributed to rising college costs and increased student debt. This does not make sense. The maximum amount that undergraduate students can borrow in subsidized loans has remained unchanged at $23,000 for the last 20 years. There are many courses that are accelerating tuitions, but the amount of available, accessible federal borrowing to students has remained unchanged for 20 years. But increasing the cost of these loans by doubling the interest rate will certainly make college more expensive for families and for students. We need to address college costs, but having the federal government double the interest it charges to students, particularly low and moderate income students, is not the solution. In fact, it complicates the problem dramatically. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle say they want to stop this from happening. Governor Romney, the presumptive nominee, says he wants to stop it from happening. Yet they are blocking even moving forward procedurally so that we can debate these issues, that they could offer their proposals to pay for what we agree to stop the doubling effect. They're blocking debate because they refuse, as much as on an ideological basis and a practical basis, to change the tax code to close a loophole that is egregious and should be closed in order to allow us to help middle-income families. I think they've taken this pledge with respect to no new taxes to a degree that defeats practical, pragmatic solution to a problem that they know has to be solved, and has to be solved before July 1st. This decision is fairly clear. It's a choice between allowing young people to get their college degree, or is it obeisance, fealty to a pledge never ever to raise anything that Grover Norquist says is remotely connected to a tax. It's that simple. Unfortunately, this simplicity is undercutting the hopes and dreams of thousands of American students. And that's what it's coming down to. And one of the other ironies in this debate is that what we propose to do, closing this subchapter S loophole for high wage earners in professional endeavors, is something that has long been criticized by conservatives. In the 2004 presidential campaign, the late conservative columnist Robert Novak described the subchapter S loophole as, quote, one of the last loopholes left in the Internal Revenue Service Code, and it is a big one. And I don't think anyone would accuse the late Robert Novak as being anything but staunchly conservative in all of his views. The Wall Street Journal, calling out former Senator John Edwards for the use of this loophole in 2004, called it a, quote, clever tax dodge. So again, we have a clever tax dodge pitted against helping students go to college. I think helping student college should win. In fact, the Wall Street editorial points out how this, in practice, this loophole is used. In their words, while making his fortune as a trial lawyer, referring to Senator Edwards, in 1995, he formed what is known as a Subchapter S corporation with himself as the sole shareholder. Instead of taking his $26.9 million in earnings directly in the following 4 years, he paid himself a salary of $360,000 a year and took the rest as corporate dividends at obviously a much lower tax rate, but also avoiding payroll taxes. That's what we're trying to close here. I think it should be closed on its merits anyway, but I think the added benefit is we're able, by closing this loophole, to prevent the doubling of the interest rate on student loans. So this is a loophole that should be closed. And again, this money will require people to pay directly in the Social Security Trust Fund and the Medicare Trust Fund, these funds which otherwise are avoided through the Subchapter S, so it doesn't weaken Social Security. But it allows us, through the scoring mechanism, to prevent doubling of loans. It's a win-win proposition. Now, what they have proposed is going after the preventive care funds that President Obama has passed in health reform. It seems to me it's a sort of an unfortunate pitting of one program that benefits middle-income families versus another program that potentially benefits us all, but particularly middle-income families. And frankly, I think there's another concept here which we all agree about in theory, is that if we don't enhance prevention activities, and the cost of health care will keep going up and up and up and up. What is unsustainable now will become more unsustainable. And it's not an appropriate way to deal with this issue. So at a minimum, I hope we can at least get to a serious debate about this. If that's the proposal that the Republicans have, let's get it on the table. Let's take a vote. Let's take a vote whether you want to close loopholes for very specialized, very wealthy lobbyists and lawyers and professionals, or do you want to impact the potential savings on health care through prevention that the President has proposed? I think and I hope we can come to a bipartisan agreement. The clock is ticking. The time to act is now. Students are family and accounting to do the right thing and to fix this problem. And with that, Madam President, I would yield the floor.
Senator from Tennessee.
Madam President, I enjoyed listening to the senator from Rhode Island, and his passion for education is always on his sleeve and always front and center, and I admire him for that. A couple of things I'd like to make clear, though. If you're a student and you already have a student loan, what we're talking about has nothing to do with you. In other words, your rate's not going up. What we're talking about only affects new loans. So before you think about not going to college next year because of all this talk about student loan rates going up, that's not a problem. We're only talking about new loans. Second, for 60% of the students who get new loans, we're not talking about you either. So you don't have to worry about student loan rates going up. And third, for those of you whom we are talking about, the 40% who have these subsidized student loans, what we're talking about saving you is $7 a month in interest payments over the next 10 years. $7 a month can add up, which is why Governor Romney, as well as President Obama, Republicans as well as Democrats, want to keep the rate at the rate it is now, 3.4% for another year. But it's $7 a month. It's important to know that. It's also important to know that there's an easy way to get this done. The House of Representatives has already passed a bill that would keep the 3.4% at the current level for new loans for these 40% of the loans for one more year. So all the majority leader has to do is bring up the House-passed bill and enact it. In other words, we agree. We only have a difference of opinion about how to pay for it. I have an alternative supported by most Republicans, which is the same as the House bill, which simply says we want to keep the rate where it is, 3.4%, and we want to do the logical thing to pay for it. We want to give back to students the money that the government's taking from them to help pay for the health care bill. You may think, what in the world does the health care bill have to do with students' loan? That's what we thought. That's what we thought when the health care law came up. Because what our friends on the other side did during the health care law was take over the whole student loan program and turn the United States Secretary of Education into the United States Banking Commissioner almost. He has the job of making $100 billion of new student loans every year. The idea was the government can make it better than the banks. Our friends on the other side said to the students, the banks are overcharging you, we're going to take it over and we'll be doing you a favor. Well, what did our friends do? They did take it over. They didn't do the students a favor. According to the Congressional Budget Office, there was $61 billion of savings, money that the students shouldn't have been paying, I suppose, when we took it over. And what did the Democrats do? They spent it, all except for $10 billion. And they spent $8.7 billion helping to pay for the health care law. So the way the Congressional Budget Office looks at it, $61 billion in savings resulted from, and these are my words, borrowing money at 2.8% and loaning it to students at 6.8%. We want to take that profit, that overcharging the students, give it back to students. That's the way to pay for the 3.4% that we're talking about. So we're in agreement. Republicans as well as Democrats, Governor Romney as well as President Obama say, keep the 3.4 at 3.4 for another year. Students should know that it doesn't affect anybody who has a loan today and that it will save you $7 a month, and we want to do that. But the way we want to do it is give back to you money that the other side took from you to help pay for the health care bill. That's the right way to do it, instead of the typical reaction we often hear from the other side was, we have something we want to do, so we'll simply raise taxes on people creating jobs in the middle of a recession. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Madam President, I have immense respect for the senator from Tennessee, and no one is as knowledgeable about education programs as he. He's former Secretary of Education and someone who has a deep, deep commitment to education, as respected by his remarks not only on charter school, but his remarks on education always. He refers to what the House has done. The House, in the Ryan budget, maintains this increase, this doubling of interest rates. They foresaw, anticipated, and supported the increase to 6.8%. Only recently have they apparently had a change of heart and decided that that is not appropriate. The other aspect I think it's interesting to note about the House is that they have proposed significant reductions in tax rates, and they have said they'd pay for it by closing loopholes. Well, this is one of the most egregious loopholes that you can find, and yet, of course, they won't use this to pay for something which makes a great deal of sense, which they now agree there should be no doubling of the student interest rate. The senator is absolutely right. This doubling will not apply to loans that are outstanding. It will apply to loans going forward. But if we establish the principle which was embedded in the Ryan House budget, which I think was supported by most, if not all, of my colleagues on the other side, that this rate is going to be doubled to 6.8% going forward, that's going to be a significant impact on students that have years to go in college, on people who are contemplating going to college. And so the $6 or $7 it may be per month becomes significant overall. Again, we can get into a discussion about where does this money come from ultimately in terms of was it part of funds for health care, et cetera. But we're facing this choice today. of closing an egregious loophole that benefits the wealthiest Americans. It benefits people. It's being criticized by the Wall Street Journal, criticized by Robert Novak, the late columnist, and helping students, or practically going in and targeting prevention programs that, again, I think conceptually we'd agree, if we don't get a handle on prevention, diabetes, of cancer, of diseases that are costing us billions and billions of dollars, then our task of dealing with health care will be immensely more difficult. And so it's very clear. But what is also very clear is, I think procedurally, the answer is quite straightforward. Let's get on to the bill. Let us go ahead and put these two different proposals on the floor and take a vote. I would hope that the proposal to close the loophole would pass, but if it did not, at least we would be in a position of preventing the doubling of interest rates in student loans. So with great respect to the Senator from Tennessee, I hope we could move forward, have a vote on the different proposals to pay for it, and then move forward and let people know that their rates will not be doubled.
Madam President.
Senator from Oregon.
Madam President, I strongly support this legislation, S-2343, the Stop Student Loan Interest Rate Hike Act. I appreciate the leadership, particularly of Senator Reid of Rhode Island, who has been so eloquent on this subject. And I also would note that Senator Alexander and I have worked together on a host of issues, and I think he brings great expertise to this discussion as well. The bottom line for me, Madam President, is that millions of young people are hurting right now in America. They are up to their eyeballs in debt, and they can't find good-paying jobs. For example, we've seen in our home state, according to the Oregon Employment Department, that the overall unemployment rate last year was 9.4%, but was 19% for workers aged 16 to 24. And I would also note that we have seen, again, most recently, that the labor participation for young people has declined as well. So we have an enormous array of challenges in front of us. And the reason that this legislation, the Stop Student Loan Interest Rate Hike, is so important is that it allows us to achieve two important objectives. First, it puts us in a position to hold the line on student debt. If you're a sophomore, for example, in college, and you've already incurred some debt, you're thinking about finishing college, you'd like to get a degree in a field where you could get a job that pays a good wage. Without this legislation, Madam President, you are going to incur still more debt. So this legislation ought to be supported because it holds the line on debt, and by doing so, it helps us achieve a very important objective with respect to opportunity for young people, and that is it increases the opportunity for young people to access higher education across the country. And whether historically, whether it's been Pell Grants or Stafford loans and the like, we know that it's been important, and families around kitchen tables and living rooms have said this for years. We've always said to young people, try to get to college. Work hard in high school, try and get to college. We'll support here in our country policies that increase access to a good education. And by holding the line on debt, we take steps to achieve an important part of higher education policy, and that is expanding access to higher education. The second part of this legislation, in my view, is by holding the line on debt, you increase the opportunity for young people to get more value out of their education. And the reason I bring this up, Mr. President, is my sense is that future policy in the higher education field is going to be about marrying these two objectives. Let's support this important legislation, S. 2343, to expand access, and use it as a foundation to move on to the next step of education policy, which is to get more value out of the education that a young person pursues. The reason I feel that way is that all over my state, Mr. President, I'm going to high schools and community colleges and talking with students who are thinking about both of those principles, access and value. At Blue Mountain Community College, for example, in Pendleton, I met a young man who's taking 20 credits at school. He's working at Arby's full-time as a manager. He's already concerned about the debt he's racking up. And he said to me, how will I know as I get my education that I've laid the groundwork for being able to get a good-paying job? And I told him, just as I'm suggesting to the Senate today, that I'm going to support efforts to expand loans and make sure that we hold down debt for young people. And I described what we're dealing with on the floor of the Senate. And then I said, I've also introduced a piece of legislation with our colleague from the other side of the aisle, Marco Rubio, called the Student Right to Know Before You Go Act, so that it is possible for students all across the country to get information about the expected average annual earnings after graduation, the rates of remedial enrollment for a particular field at a particular college, the average cost both before and after financial aid, and the prospects of a student earning a good wage after achieving a particular degree at a particular school. And with this legislation, Mr. President, we lay the foundation for what I think will be the education policy of the future, ensuring that students have access and ensuring that they get more value out of the education and, in many instances, these loans and other programs that they have to pay back. And the two go hand in hand. Without this legislation, Mr. President, if you're a sophomore at a college, and I ran into students who were already juniors, for example, at colleges in my state who would already owe $60,000, without this legislation, that junior, for example, is probably going to re-up for a loan again, and they are going to have to pay more, which means that that's going to reduce their access to higher education. And if, for example, they have to, pay more, it seems that also is going to reduce the opportunity for students to buy a bit more value out of their education as we look at getting them information that they now find hard to get with respect to the value of various kinds of degree programs. And suffice it to say, these two judgments, both with respect to debt and the value of what they have pursued in terms of their college degree, are going to color judgments for the rest of their lives. The students that I met in Oregon recently, as I talked to them about this issue, one was interested in getting a medical degree. And as we talked about health care issues, and the President of the Senate and I have both been very interested in this subject over the years, one of the questions that he asked me was how he was going to be able to get a medical degree initially, and what would happen to him when he got out of medical school with all this debt hanging over his head. And I really didn't want to chill his enthusiasm, but we know, Mr. President, if a young person comes out of medical school with an enormous amount of debt, there's a pretty good chance at some point they're going to have to pass some of that debt on to their patients which means that we're going to see medical, costs for a lot of people in our country escalate still higher. So the fact that we have these debts, the fact that it is hard for young people to purchase value in their education is going to have remarkable ripples all through our country for years and years ahead. And I'm going to close simply by way of saying is we've seen what young people, contribute to our economy. And the President of the Senate shares an interest with this senator in technology. Technology has been a big source of jobs in states like Minnesota and Oregon. This has been a real economic engine for our country. Think about who brought us Facebook and Google and Twitter and YouTube. The disproportionate amount of the creative talent has been young people. And if we don't take steps to hold the line on debt, first of all, and that is to pass Senator Harkin's bill. So we don't say to college, sophomores and juniors, we don't care if you rack up any more debt when we know how much heartache it's going to bring to them. And then move on to the next step, which is empowering students and families to be able to get the maximum amount of value out of their education. I think we will have let the country down in this area at a crucial time. We understand that higher education is one of the principal, if not the best, for many students, paths to success. Not for every student, but certainly for millions. And it has been, and why I describe particularly what young people have contributed in technology, a real spark for our economy. So I see other colleagues waiting to speak, and I only urge colleagues to pass this legislation, 2343, to ensure that we don't heap more debt onto the backs of students in college now who might be looking at re-upping on those loans and wondering if they can afford it. And then as we expand access, let's look at taking additional steps to ensuring that our young people get more value for their college education. Senator Rubio and I have teamed up on a bill that I think addresses that question, the Student Right to Know Before You Go Act. And to me, going to that next step of adding more value to a young person's education when they're armed with the facts requires that you lay the foundation of access to a good education, which I think requires, at this time when so many young people are hurting, and I went through the statistics, it requires that we pass S. 2343. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from North Carolina.
Mr. President, I come to the floor today to also speak about preserving student loan interest rates from doubling from 3.4% to 6.8%. I'm disappointed that partisan gamesmanship is threatening the financial futures of students in North Carolina and around the country. In North Carolina, we are very proud of our 16 excellent public universities and 58 outstanding community colleges. In addition, dozens of the best private colleges and universities in the nation also call North Carolina home. Our excellence in higher education sets North Carolina apart. Business owners I talk to routinely tell me that our highly educated and highly skilled workforce is what attracted their companies to North Carolina. And there is no doubt that the strength of our economy going forward depends on the continued system of our education, on the continued strength of our education system. However, the cost of college continues to rise in North Carolina and across the country. And if Congress does not act before July 1st, more than 160,000 North Carolina students will be saddled with an additional $1,000 in student loan debt. According to the Project on Student Debt, more than half of North Carolina's 300,000 students at four-year colleges and universities borrow money to pay for their education. And on average, these students graduate with more than $21,000 in debt. That debt has real consequences for our graduates and for North Carolina's economy. With this debt to pay off, young entrepreneurs are less likely to take a chance starting a small business. They're less likely to buy a new car. They're less likely to buy a home. This only hurts our economy. Keeping interest rates low will go a long way to ensuring that young people can afford their student loan payments when they graduate. I recently heard from a freshman at UNC Charlotte about how concerned she already was, this is a freshman, about the debt that she was piling up when she graduates in 4 years. She can't imagine what would happen if interest rates double. Perhaps she would have to drop out altogether. A student at Western Carolina University recently wrote me while studying for finals, asking that we please prevent a doubling of his student loan interest rates. So in the midst of preparing for final exams, this young man was worrying about the final bill that he'll receive after graduating. He said doubling the Stafford loan interest rate would severely hurt his ability to continue his education. He wants to study cell biology. In a global 21st century economy, the sciences are exactly the types of fields we need our students to excel in so that we can compete with China and other foreign countries. We should be helping these young people succeed, not throwing up barriers that get in the way. I'm also hearing from parents. A mom with 3 children emailed recently. Her older child will be starting college in 2 years. She is already worried about the debt that her children will incur and certainly is requesting that we not double the interest rate on this debt. Our students deserve a fighting chance when they graduate. We shouldn't put them thousands of dollars behind before they even reach the starting line. I will do my part to ensure students in North Carolina have the chance to thrive after graduating, and I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this legislation that will prevent student interest rate loans from doubling. Thank you, Mr. President. I notice the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. A quorum call on the floor of the Senate now. Senators spending most of the day on a bill that would prevent student loan interest rates from doubling on July 1st, going from 3.4% to 6.8%. Republicans continue to oppose an effort to move forward on the legislation because they want a chance to offer another way to pay the $6 billion cost of the freeze-on rates. 7.4 million student loan interest rates could double unless Congress decides to extend the subsidy. The Senate could vote on a motion to move forward on the bill again sometime today. The House gavelled in this morning at 10. Today, members working on a bill to continue the Export-Import Bank charter through fiscal year 2013, making changes to lending caps, default rates, and accountability. Also a bill extending a $9 billion loan guarantee for Israel. See live coverage of the House on our companion network, C-SPAN, and of course the Senate right here on C-SPAN 2.
Mr. President.
The senator from New Mexico.
Mr. President, I understand we are on the motion to proceed.
We are actually in a quorum call.
I'd ask unanimous consent the